Hello and welcome everyone to the TLMI printTHINK webinar. Today our topic is selecting the right white for your project presented by Sun Chemical. I'm Keith Graham. I'm Vice President of Sales and Operations for Label Tracks, and I'm also a member of the TLMI Technical Committee. So before we get started, just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the TLMI website. So at this point, I want to hand it over to Dennis Sweet. He's Vice President of Commercial Business for Sun Chemical. And Sun, I'll let you take, or Dennis, I'll let you take it from here and introduce members of your team.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Keith. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining TLMI and Sun Chemical in talking about the right white for your project. Choosing the right probably has never been more complicated than it is today. Issues of opacity, lay, Anilox selection, the press speed you're running at, sustainability requirements, adhesion, the substrate you're using, chemical resistance, low migration requirements, right? It goes on and on. So today we've assembled a group of people that all focus in the narrow web tag and label space at Sun Chemical to kind of answer some of these questions for you. And we'll be taking questions towards the end of the presentation. So today there's Chuck Ramsey and Bill Manwaring will be on the presentation. Both of these fellows are field technical market managers, and their role is to take the technology of Sun Chemical and make sure that it operates correctly on your particular applications, right? So every application is different, and their role is to make sure that they're taking into account your Anilox, your press speeds, your press configurations to get the products to work the way you want them to work. Dr. David Bureau, who heads up our narrow web tag and label technology group. Nicola Juhas, who heads up Sun Chemical's sustainability initiative. So those are the folks that will be taking you through this presentation. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chuck Ramsey, who will be leading it off.
Thanks, Dennis. Picking the right white for your project is key. Understanding the substrates, understanding the inks, understanding requirements, press speeds, all those process variables come into play when thinking through a white. Application requirements for whites when you're selecting them. There's variable designs, applications, customer needs, demands that are out there, and requirements. Understanding the considerations of the variables as first down, the opacity levels you're targeting, shrink requirements, adhesion demands. Is this a low migration job? Press speeds and production times, and other capabilities of your equipment. Chemical resistance and sustainability also come into factor. Today's press speeds and opacity targets have changed considerably over the past few years. Press speeds are now targeting 500 feet plus. Opacity values nearing 80, where just a few years ago is acceptable to be in the 50 and 60% range. Thankfully today in the press room, the environment out there has had advances. Anilox rollers, inks, doctor blades, sticky backs, polymers, UV lamp systems, hot air systems, and corona treaters have all kept up with these demands. There are also the different applications, and some of these are actually intertwined in what they consider to be hybrid presses. UV applications, water, LED, UV, hybrid digital design, combination presses, straight digital, and also solvent-based, all play into the narrow web and also your choice of white. So with all that information, how do we get there? We do it through lab work. We do it through development. We do it through research. We do it in our laboratories, and we utilize all the means available to understand these process variables and what the impact is on whites and other items. So now here to speak about that is Dr. David Bureau of Sun Chemical.
Thank you, Chuck. Now I would like to take you through a quick video where I would show you how we do some of the lab testing and press testing in our facility in Carlstadt, New Jersey. Sun Chemical has several presses throughout the world to evaluate and study print process. In Carlstadt, New Jersey, we use the Copac press, capable of speeds up to 500 feet per minute. It is a 6-unit central impression press with interstation UV and UV LED lamps. With the rewinds, we're able to flag the rolls and study the inks accordingly. Here we see we're studying the inks with a banded Anilox, so we can evaluate laydown, transfer, cure, and opacities at different film weights and press speeds. The rolls are evaluated offline by several chemists and technicians. This way we can study different inks and chemistries and end uses. Opacity is the ability of the white ink to hide or mask a color or object in the back of the film. A high opacity printed film allows one to read the graphics and not see through the film. Translucency is the ability of a white ink to permit the passage of light. Conversely, white is in the eye of the beholder. Some people want a bright white ink, while others want a blue or gray tone to their white ink. White is the lightest possible color. When we consider opacity, we have to consider really how much hiding power do we really need? What's really the factor that's important here? To do some of these measurements, we would use either a BNL opacimeter or contrast ratio on a spectrophotometer. Also, the visual interpretation of opacity is crucial because that's where you get to see what really white and opacity look like. In this visualization, we have taken films with different levels of opacity as measured here. You see the difference of 60% opacity all the way up to 75% opacity over a Lanetta card. In many cases, you want to have the most opaque product that you need. In some cases, you don't need an opaque product like that. The opacity of a UV white ink will differ with the Anilox that is used to deposit the ink film. In this diagram, you see the contrast ratio of 70, 73, and 75 with 3 different Aniloxes, as we did on the press. There's almost a 50% increase in volume, results in only a 5-point change in opacity. So ink selection is critical. When we do our tests on press, one thing we can notice is just using 3 different inks, we can have different amounts of opacity. In the case here, our neutron white has an opacity of 71, while the photon white is pretty close with an opacity close to 69, and our platinum white with an opacity of 65. Press speed does have an impact on opacity. As we use a banded Anilox with a given white, we noted that going from 50 meters per minute to 150 meters per minute, there was a drop off in opacity, particularly at higher volumes. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the opacity drop from almost 77 down to 70. While with the thinner ink film, we see only a slight drop. Sun Chemical has many tools at its disposal to study ink films. One of them is a scanning electron microscope. In this case, we see an ink with poor adhesion to the substrate on the left-hand side of the picture. There is a separation at that interface, so we will see poor adhesion. On the right-hand side is a white ink that has very good adhesion to the surface, and there is no discontinuity in the film. We use optical microscopy, we use electron microscopy, and we can even use confocal microscopy. Tape adhesion is one very important parameter that people consider when evaluating whites on surfaces. We can use normal 600, 610, and 810 Scotch tapes to evaluate the adhesion of our white inks on various films. Sun Chemical has developed a UV white that is very good for adhesion on difficult substrates. Using our photon technology, we develop a product which has great adhesion on many difficult substrates. You can see here as this product is compared to a standard white. And now I will introduce Bill Manwaring, who will continue with a little bit on corona treatment.
Thanks, David. Let's talk a little bit about corona treatment and how that affects your press performance for adhesion. Films have surface energy, while inks have surface tension. And how can we increase the surface energy of a film for better adhesion? One way to do that is corona treatment. In today's industry, we often struggle with older films that are inherently structured with lower dyne levels. By having this piece of equipment on the press, we can bump up the surface tension of a film to a desired level of 40 to 45. Using dine pens to test the substrate confirm acceptable surface tensions prior to starting your print. UV shrink characteristics versus targets. UV whites are intended for reverse print shrink sleeve film application where slip control is required without the use of clear overprint targets. So what we're trying to do is achieve adhesion while shrinking. Shrink capabilities can be 30 to 50%, up to 70%. We also want high levels of scratch and rub resistance, designed to be targeted for the COF, and while keeping in mind our sustainability requirements. Let's talk a little bit about shrink comparison and how we test these in our labs. There's a few criteria we use. We use the tape test, the 610, the 600, and the 810 tape test, but we also do rub resistant testing called chalking. As we shrink the film, the ink has to shrink along with the film. If it does not, we get bad adhesion and we get bad rub. One of the criteria for that is on the right-hand side, is called chalking. And what we've done here is we did a tape test and then we rub the white and see if it chalks. And as you can see, 1 through 5, 5 being the heavy chalking, no adhesion. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Nicola Juhas to talk about sustainability.
Before getting to our recyclable ink solutions, let me just take a quick step back to put those solutions into proper context by introducing Sun Chemical's overarching sustainability strategy and roadmap to show how we go about designing products to enable more sustainable packaging. Our total sustainable solutions portfolio, which is identifiable under our new Sun Eco brand and the 5R framework, is reflected in the ways that we enable the transition from a linear to a circular economy to achieve industry-wide reductions in carbon footprint through ink, coatings, and adhesives technologies. We enable reuse by designing products that contain post-consumer recycled materials or with protective coatings and resistant inks that can withstand multiple wash cycles, for example, to enable reusable articles or packaging. We provide products to help to reduce overall packaging weight through protective and barrier coatings and also with barrier adhesives technologies, as well as with direct food contact inks, for example, that also help to eliminate protective layers. We help reduce waste at converter facilities with multi-purpose, extended color gamut, and digital inks. And we reduce energy and VOCs through adoption of energy cure, including LED technologies. We design product lines with high levels of renewable content, which immediately translates into CO2 emissions reductions. We also engineer products to enhance recyclability, including repulpability and compostability of a range of packaging structures, and we'll talk in more detail about our solutions for recyclability in just a moment. Finally, we can support fundamental redesigns in packaging and printing processes. For example, as the market considers transitions from plastic to paper or looks at shifts from multi-material to monomaterial structures, or from laminations to monowebs that also help recyclability, or in evaluating environmental footprints of different printing technologies. One final consideration is around compliance and beyond compliance. New developments must be fully compliant with current regulatory standards to ensure they're favorable not only for the planet, but also for human health. And increasingly, safe and compliant may not be enough, when even trace level detection of certain substances of concern can be problematic, and also particularly in a circular economy where such substances have to be managed potentially through multiple product life cycles. And in this environment, beyond compliance may become the new standard. Now, when we design ink solutions for printing on shrink sleeves and labels with end of application life in mind, there are two key points. Those ink products should not bleed into the caustic baths used to wash and decontaminate the plastic articles, bottles, for example. Bleeding would introduce heavy color into the wash solutions and create issues in terms of wastewater. And second, and even more important, ink bleeding could stain the recycled PET, which is clearly not desired. So what is desired? There are two scenarios. On the right side of the slide, we show the scenario of floatable sleeve or label films, which are typically BOPP, that are separated from the PET to be recycled through a flotation step during that recycling process. In this case, the inks should stay with the films, not impede the flotation, and not bleed, of course. On the left side of the slide is the second scenario for new crystallizable PET films, which are compatible with and can be co-recycled together with the PET bottles, assuming the inks can be removed. In this case, we want a controlled release of the inks as particles that can be separated, no bleeding or staining of either wash water or PET, of course. So, depending on the film type, the inks are engineered to stay with the label or sleeve or to flake off. Sun Chemical has ink and coating solutions for the floatable films, and we've launched and are continuing to expand a portfolio of de-inkable or washable inks for the new crystallizable PET sleeves. Our first generation technology is solvent-based and gravure printable, tested on several commercial jobs, has formal APR recognition as being designed for recyclability, and also passes the corresponding European protocols. And it's commercially available now. Generation 2 technology has been developed for Flexo and gravure application and is also commercial. Generation 3 is our energy curable line. Our UV Flexo products, like all our wash-off technologies, do not require use of primer, pass the prevailing US and European recycling protocols. Finally, a water-based technology is advancing with prototypes performing well for de-inking and recyclability, and applications testing is underway. Focusing more specifically on our UV Flexo washable inks. These are primer-free with chemistry designed to de-ink in the caustic wash process without needing a primer for that release. They meet APR critical guidance targets for recyclability in terms of no wash water staining and also for target LAB values on the recycled flake. The inks are designed with the application requirements in mind, allowing high levels of shrink and meeting all typical label and sleeve resistance requirements.
Thanks, Nicola. Hey, let's review a little bit. Let's talk about everything we've learned today, about dyeing levels to adhesion to opacity, you name it, we've learned it. One thing we haven't talked about is the Aniloxes. Analogs out there and the demand for analoxes are extremely high. Their ability to deliver that ink to that substrate in a dedicated volume is hypercritical. Making sure you have the proper cleaners and you utilize them the proper way, whether it's a sonic cleaner, whether it's an auto wash system, whether it's just a hand application. The worst thing in the world is to use one of your current solvents, IPA, Refresh, 80/20 solvents. I see guys using these as a cleaner out there. And what they do is they strictly just re-wet the ink. They don't clean to the bottom of the cell. I've seen this firsthand. I was in a company about a year ago. They had me hand wipe an Anilox with our cleaner. I pulled out not only a dried in white ink, but I actually started pulling black out of it, which was a color they had ran prior to. So again, there's a difference between cleaner and a solvent. Cleaners break down and dissolve the contamination within the wall, within the cells, and make that Anilox to its full potential. True Anilox volumes can make or break your application. If you have any questions over if you're using the right Anilox cleaner, reach out to your Sun Chemical representative. They can best address your needs. Let's talk about other considerations in selecting whites. Low migration, food packaging, low odor, water-based application, LED, screen whites, solvent whites, you name it. All those have to be considered when you're talking with your customers and considering what whites you're going to put in that application. So with all that said and done, don't go it alone. Ask for a technical consultation. Ask your ink suppliers. Ask Sun Chemical. Have somebody come in and do an audit, work with you on all of your projects. That's the best way to do an audit, to do a customer profile, to understand what your target is and what your product is second to none. The ability to offer not only an ink, but to offer the technical support and know-how in laboratory, in field is critical. So don't go it alone. Thank you for your time, and let me hand it back over to the TLMI moderator.
Thank you so much, and what a great presentation there. Thank you so much. Let's get everybody back online here. So just a reminder that if you have any questions, please submit them in the question session in your control panel. I have some questions here that we'll be able to address to the panel here. So Dennis, we've got already 6 questions here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. How do you measure cure for a UV white ink?
Yeah, so I'm going to let Dave Bureau answer that. Dave?
Yeah. Okay. Hi. This is David. For a cure for a UV white ink, we would do it by several different methods. Technically, we would basically look at solvent resistance initially, thumb twist, mechanical resistance, scratch resistance, tape tests and such. Those are the standard conventional methods we would use. We can also use more scientific methods like FTIR or cross-link density.
Okay. What factors affect ink adhesion?
Factors such as the substrate is one of them. Another one, whether the substrate's not treated enough, that's something that Bill described a bit, and also Chuck. Some of the other factors include how much light the material sees, and another factor also is surface energy.
Is there anything else there?
No, not right now.
Okay. So I've got another question here for the group. Which other sustainable technologies, in addition to inks designed for recyclability, can Sun Chemical offer for the tag and label market?
Nicola, you want to take those sustainability questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that I was able to share some of our broader portfolio in the introductory slide showing our 5R concepts and framework. Specifically for the tag and label market, we can also offer solutions in order to enable those transitions from laminated labels, say, to monoweb structures through protective coatings that bring back those protective features that an additional film layer would offer in a laminated structure. So that's a lightweighting opportunity. And again, we have a full line of UV LED curable inks that can also translate into immediate efficiency and savings at the converting facility, as well as extended color gamut inks that help to reduce waste and unnecessary inventory. So those are a couple of the options that we could talk with interested folks about, and we'd be happy to explore further.
Okay, great answer. Are the washable inks suitable for standard PETG labels and sleeves?
Yeah, I'll take that one as well, Dennis. They will wash off standard PETG sleeves. But keep in mind that those sleeves themselves are not compatible with PET bottle recycling. So they create issues because the glycol modified PETG, it tends to stay soft. It's processed at a different temperature, and it'll create issues in recycling, clumping, and other things. So it's really that that label film is not compatible. And we see that the industry is transitioning over to the crystallizable version because it's fully compatible with the PET bottles, thereby increasing quality and quantity of that precious recyclable PET, which the market is looking for.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned photon white and its adhesion properties. Is this technology available in other colors?
Yeah, so I can answer that. Yeah, so the photon technology is brand new in the marketplace, something Sun Chemical has developed. for especially difficult substrates. And right now we have the technology applied to the whites. So the photon white is specifically designed for high speed with difficult substrates. And also we've developed a photon black product. In some cases, we've been able to eliminate the use of a primer in using that photon black. We're currently developing the photon technology for all the other colors, different pigments that we use, and that's under development right now.
Okay. At the end of the presentation, you mentioned a technology review conducted by Sun. Is there a charge for that service?
No, actually, Sun Chemical maintains a staff of technical field people as well as technical service people all throughout the United States and Canada. And we consider that part of our program. You know, we covered a lot in this presentation. Probably, you know, I would have liked to have gone into a lot more depth in any one of those areas, but we just didn't have the time space to do it. As I mentioned when we started this, you know, the technology today has become very complex and a lot of variables exist. Really the best way of proceeding is to do an audit of the press room, understand all the variables that are going to be taken into account, and then specify the right product so that that product has all of the characteristics that you're looking for, the right press speed, used on the right Anilox with the right substrate, and you know, characterized in every possible dimension, so that we could spec that out. You know, Sun has a number, and as many ink suppliers do, have a number of products. But I think the thing that we try to bring to the equation is having the people there by your side, and you know, Bill and Chuck are perfect examples of that, where you know, they work with you to try to identify the right products for your particular application.
Okay. We have another question. Can you expand on the topic of low migration? What exactly is that?
Dave, do you want to take that?
Yes, I'll take that. In terms of low migration, we're looking at materials of construction in the ink, which will not migrate, and also the cross-link matrix that the UV ink is made will be tight, and there will be no chance for things to migrate through or diffuse through in the ink.
Right. So what you'll find, just to add to what Dave just said, a lot of pharmaceutical applications or food packaging applications will require low migration products, right? So those are products that we have to certify will not migrate through the film or the barrier and get into the material that's contained in the actual package. So those are called low migration products. They're specialty products. We do apply them. And the application of the product also has to be monitored on a press. So it's a complex subject, but it is something that we're finding is more and more coming to the limelight.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time. So Dennis, from your panel, is there anything that you guys would like to add?
No, I think, you know, I apologize up front for some of the technical difficulties we had running the presentation. We also had a video that we would have liked to have shown you of some of all the analytical work that we did on the whites was actually done in the Carlson laboratory on our presses there. We wanted to actually show that to you, but unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we were not able to make that happen. But certainly, if any questions you have or regarding whites or any of the items that are mentioned here, feel free to contact us.
And real quick, Keith, I wanted to thank the Sun Chemical team here. I know that was extremely difficult and not as it went as planned. The recording will be just the introduction and the final portion here, and we will put in the original video when it's sent out. So you will see all of that info in greater detail. So thank you all again. I know that was extremely difficult. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay. As the moderator, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today, everybody from the Sun team, people from TLMI, and then again, everybody who signed up to watch and join us today. So everyone have a great and wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.